Zephak's clawed hands trembled as he stared at the empty nursery pods. The bioluminescent walls of his ship pulsed with soft blue light, casting eerie shadows across the vacant chambers where his 3 hatchlings should have been sleeping. 26 rotations had passed since he last saw them, and the silence in the nursery felt like a physical weight pressing against his chest. The Catherian commander ran his scaled fingers along the smooth surfaces of the pods, searching for any trace of his offspring. Nith, Vex, and little Kira had vanished without explanation during what should have been routine hyperspace travel through the contested border regions near human space. His ship's sensors showed no signs of breach, no evidence of kidnapping, no trace of the hatchlings anywhere within the vessel's corridors. Zephak's species had evolved from predatory pack hunters on a world where parental bonds meant survival. Losing track of offspring triggered every instinct in his DNA, flooding his system with stress hormones that made his usually pale blue skin flush to deep purple. The other crew members avoided him now, knowing that a distraught Catherian parent could become unpredictably violent. The ship's navigation officer, T-Mac, approached cautiously from the entrance. His own coloring remained neutral gray, a sign of his attempt to appear non-threatening. "Commander, we're approaching the human colony world of Haven Prime. Our scans detected unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface that matched the temporal distortions we recorded when the hatchlings disappeared." Haven Prime sat in disputed territory, a small agricultural world that humans had settled despite Catherian claims to the system. The planet had become a source of tension between their species, with both governments claiming historical rights to the fertile world. Zephak had been ordered to investigate human expansion in the region when his personal crisis began. "The humans," Zephak hissed, his voice carrying the subsonic rumble that indicated deep anger in his species. "They must have taken them during our passage. Their technology has always been unpredictable, chaotic. Perhaps they developed some form of transporter beam." T-Mac's skin rippled with uncertainty patterns. "Commander, our sensors show no signs of human spacecraft in the area when the disappearance occurred. The temporal signatures suggest something more complex than simple abduction." Zephak ignored his officer's caution. Every Catherian knew that humans possessed an almost supernatural ability to adapt and improvise with technology in ways that defied conventional understanding. Their species had gone from primitive combustion engines to faster-than-light travel in less than 2 centuries, a pace of development that made even the most advanced civilizations nervous. The commander's ship, Threeketh, descended through Haven Prime's atmosphere with stealth fields engaged. Below them stretched endless fields of earth crops adapted to the planet's slightly higher gravity and longer seasons. Human settlements dotted the landscape like scattered jewels, connected by transport networks that seemed to grow organically across the terrain. Zephak's tactical display highlighted the largest settlement, New Brisbane, where approximately 50,000 humans lived and worked. The energy signatures T-Mac had detected originated from somewhere within the city's boundaries. More importantly, the readings suggested the presence of Catherian biotechnology, specifically the unique quantum signatures that each hatchling carried in their developing nervous systems. Landing in a forested area outside the city, Zephak prepared for what might become either a rescue mission or the beginning of an interstellar incident. He strapped on his personal armor, its adaptive camouflage systems designed to blend with local environments. The weapon at his side hummed with charged particles, capable of stunning or killing depending on his intentions. His reflection in the ship's polished surfaces showed a being transformed by desperate parental love. Normally, Catherians prided themselves on logical thinking and careful planning. Zephak's usual pale blue coloring had given way to the mottled patterns of extreme stress, his crest raised in permanent threat display. "T-Mac, you have command until I return," he announced. "If I don't report back within 1 planetary rotation, contact the fleet and inform them that humans have committed an act of war against our people." The navigation officer's skin flashed protest colors. "Commander, perhaps we should attempt diplomatic contact first. The humans might be willing to negotiate if they have indeed taken your offspring." Zephak's laugh came out as a harsh bark. "Diplomacy? They steal Catherian young and you suggest diplomacy? No, I will find my hatchlings and bring them home. If the humans interfere, they will learn why our ancestors conquered half the galaxy before your species even discovered fire." He activated his armor's stealth systems and stepped into the alien night. Haven Prime's twin moons cast silver light through the forest canopy, creating shifting patterns of shadow and illumination. The air carried scents of earth vegetation mixed with native Preman flowers, a combination that reminded Zefek how far from home he truly was. Moving through the forest with predatory grace, Zefek's enhanced senses picked up the sounds and smells of human civilization ahead. Their settlements always carried distinctive markers: the ozone scent of their electronics, the organic compounds from their food preparation, the electromagnetic signatures of their communications networks. As he approached the city's outskirts, Zefek's scanner began detecting stronger traces of the quantum signatures he sought. His hatchlings were definitely somewhere within New Brisbane, alive and apparently unharmed based on the readings. The knowledge should have brought relief, but instead it only intensified his anger at the humans who had dared to take them. The residential district ahead showed the typical human approach to architecture, buildings that seemed to grow organically from their surroundings rather than following geometric precision. Gardens mixed with living spaces in ways that most civilized species would consider chaotic. Yet somehow the overall effect appeared harmonious. Zefek checked his equipment one final time and began moving toward the strongest signal source. Soon, he would have answers. Soon he would know what the humans had done with his children and why they had committed such an unforgivable act. The night air around him shimmered as his stealth field engaged fully, making him nearly invisible to human sensors. Somewhere in the sleeping city ahead, his hatchlings waited for rescue. Zefek moved through the quiet streets of New Brisbane like a ghost made of shadows and determination. His scanner led him deeper into the residential area, past houses where human families slept peacefully, unaware that a desperate alien father stalked through their neighborhood. The quantum signatures grew stronger with each block, pulling him forward with the certainty of a lodestone. The human architecture fascinated and irritated him in equal measure. Where Catherian buildings followed strict geometric principles based on mathematical perfection, these structures seemed to flow organically from the landscape. Curved walls blended with natural rock formations. Rooftop gardens cascaded down exterior walls, and solar collectors doubled as artistic installations that caught Haven Prime's twin moonlight. His destination appeared to be a modest two-story house set back from the street behind a garden that mixed earth vegetables with native Preman flowering vines. The quantum signature detector in his palm pulsed with increasing intensity as he approached, confirming what his parental instincts had been screaming for weeks. His children were inside this building. Zefek's skin cycled through rapid color changes as conflicting emotions warred within him. Relief that his hatchlings were apparently alive and unharmed, fought against rage at whoever had taken them. The urge to storm through the front entrance battled with tactical caution, learned through decades of military service. He circled the property, his enhanced vision recording every detail. Standard human security systems protected the house: motion sensors, electromagnetic barriers, automated alert systems, but nothing that could challenge Catherian stealth technology. More puzzling was the lack of any obvious containment systems. If the humans were holding his hatchlings prisoner, where were the force fields, the locks, the guards? The scanner indicated that the strongest signatures came from the upper floor, specifically from a room facing the garden. Zefek engaged his armor's climbing systems and began scaling the exterior wall with gecko-like adhesion fields. His movements remained completely silent, predatory instincts honed by evolution ensuring he made no sound that might alert potential captors. Reaching the window, Zefek peered through the transparent barrier and felt his world tilt sideways. The room beyond contained what appeared to be a human child's sleeping chamber, complete with colorful wall decorations, scattered toys, and the kind of organized chaos that young beings seem to create naturally. But it was the occupants of the room that made Zefek's breath catch in his throat. On a large sleeping platform designed for humans lay a small human girl, perhaps 8 or 9 years old by their rapid development standards. Her breathing showed the deep rhythm of healthy sleep. One arm curled around a stuffed animal that looked remarkably like a miniature Catherian. Beside her, arranged as if they belonged there, slept his 3 hatchlings. Nith, Vex, and little Kira lay curled against the human child's warmth, their own breathing synchronized with hers. Their scales showed the healthy blue-green shimmer of well-fed, content young Catherians. They were not restrained, not caged, not held prisoner in any way that Zefak could detect. The sight was so utterly unexpected that Zefak found himself frozen at the window, trying to process what his eyes were telling him. His hatchlings appeared not just unharmed, but genuinely peaceful. More puzzling still, they seemed to have formed some kind of bond with the human child. Catherian young were naturally cautious around other species, instinctively wary of anything that might pose a threat. Yet his offspring lay pressed against an alien being as if they were clutchmates from the same nest. The implications made Zefak's tactical mind race through possibilities, none of which seemed to explain the scene before him. He activated his suit's recording systems and began documenting everything he could observe. The room contained no obvious technology that might explain how his hatchlings had arrived here. No transporter pads, no dimensional gateways, no evidence of the advanced science that would be required to achieve cross-species kidnapping across interstellar distances. The human child stirred slightly in her sleep, and Zefak watched as little Kira automatically adjusted her position to maintain contact. The movement was so natural, so unconsciously protective, that it suggested the arrangement had been in place for some time. His hatchlings had not been recently captured. They had been here long enough to establish behavioral patterns. A soft sound from below alerted Zefak to approaching footsteps. His helmet's audio sensors picked up human voices, two adults conversing in low tones to avoid waking anyone in the house. Zefak enhanced the signal and listened to their conversation with growing confusion. "Sarah's been sleeping so much better since they arrived," a female voice was saying. "The nightmares have completely stopped. It's like having them there makes her feel safe." "I still can't believe it actually worked," replied a male voice. "When Dr. Chen suggested the possibility, I thought he was crazy. But the quantum resonance theory seems to be accurate. Sarah's empathic abilities are definitely stabilizing their temporal displacement." Zefak's translator struggled with some of the technical terms, but the general meaning came through clearly enough. The humans were discussing his hatchlings as if they were part of some kind of scientific experiment or therapeutic treatment. The mention of temporal displacement particularly caught his attention. It suggested that his offspring's disappearance might not have been a simple kidnapping. "Have you heard anything more from the government researchers?" the male voice continued. "They were supposed to contact us about when the Catherian children might be able to return home. Dr. Chen says they're still working on stabilizing the temporal field," the female responded. "Apparently, trying to force them back too quickly could cause permanent displacement. They need more time to develop a safe solution." The conversation faded as the humans moved away from the area below his position. Zefak remained at the window, his mind struggling to process what he had overheard. The humans spoke as if they were trying to help his hatchlings, not harm them. They mentioned government researchers and scientific solutions, suggesting an official response rather than criminal activity. Looking back at the sleeping forms in the room, Zefak began to notice details that his initial shock had caused him to miss. His hatchlings showed no signs of stress, malnutrition, or poor treatment. Their scales were properly hydrated, their coloring indicated good health, and their positioning suggested they felt safe and secure. The human child, Sarah, appeared equally well cared for. Her room contained the kind of personal belongings that indicated a loving family environment, rather than any kind of detention facility. The stuffed Catherian toy in her arms suggested that her contact with his offspring was not accidental or unwanted. More puzzling still were the implications of what the adults had discussed. Temporal displacement suggested that his hatchlings had not been deliberately taken, but had somehow become lost in time or space. The mention of the human child's empathic abilities stabilizing their condition indicated that their presence together was not coincidental but necessary for some kind of healing process. Zefak's anger began to shift into confusion and concern. If the humans were telling the truth, if his hatchlings were here because they needed to be rather than because they had been kidnapped, then his entire understanding of the situation required reconsideration. He needed more information before deciding how to proceed. The responsible action would be to observe longer, to gather intelligence about exactly what had happened to his offspring and what the humans were actually doing to help them. But every parental instinct in his body screamed at him to break through the window immediately and reclaim his children. Zefak spent the remainder of the night cycle observing the house and its inhabitants, his preconceptions crumbling with each hour that passed. As Haven Prime's twin suns began to rise, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet, he watched the human family begin their morning routine through various windows. The male human, whom Zefak had identified as the father figure, moved quietly through the house preparing some kind of morning nutrition. The female, apparently the mother, checked on the sleeping children before engaging in what appeared to be communication with outside parties through a handheld device. Their behavior patterns suggested genuine care and concern, rather than the calculated actions of captors. When Sarah finally awakened, Zefak observed the most remarkable interaction he had ever witnessed between species. The human child sat up carefully, making soft cooing sounds that his translator identified as comforting vocalizations. His 3 hatchlings stirred in response, their scales shifting to the warm golden hues that indicated contentment and security. Little Kira, his youngest at barely 3 cycles old, nuzzled against Sarah's arm, while making the clicking sounds that young Catherians use to request attention from parental figures. Sarah responded immediately, gently stroking the hatchling's crest in exactly the pattern that would stimulate comfort receptors. The human child somehow knew precise Catherian nurturing behaviors despite never having formal contact with his species. Nith and Vex, his older offspring, showed similar comfort levels with their human companion. They climbed onto Sarah's shoulders as she moved around the room, their tail tips curling around her arms in gestures of trust that Catherian young typically reserved for their immediate family unit. The sight made Zefak's chest tighten with emotions he couldn't fully identify. Through the house's communication system, Zefak detected an incoming transmission. His armor's sensors automatically intercepted and decoded the signal, revealing a conversation between Sarah's parents and someone identified as Dr. Chen, apparently a government scientist studying the situation. The temporal readings are stabilizing more each day, Dr. Chen's voice carried through the house speakers. Sarah's natural empathic resonance is creating an anchor point that's allowing the Catherian children to gradually synchronize with our timeline. It's remarkable. Her brain patterns are literally teaching theirs how to exist in our present moment. How much longer will the process take? Sarah's mother asked, her voice carrying obvious concern. I know Sarah loves having them here, but their parents must be worried sick. We've been in contact with Catherian authorities, Dr. Chen replied. They're aware that 3 of their young were caught in a temporal anomaly near our border. What they don't know yet is that we've found them, and that they're safe. We're still working on diplomatic protocols for this situation. Zefak's scanner nearly slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers. The humans had been in contact with Catherian authorities. His own government knew about the temporal anomaly but hadn't informed him. The implication sent his mind reeling through possibilities, none of them comfortable. The challenge, Dr. Chen continued, is that forcing them back to their original timeline too quickly could cause permanent displacement. They need time to rebuild their temporal foundations gradually. Sarah's presence is literally keeping them anchored to reality as we know it. What about the father? Sarah's father interjected. The report said he was searching for them. Won't he try to find them on his own? Commander Zefak is known for his determination when it comes to his offspring, Dr. Chen admitted. Our intelligence suggests he's been systematically searching human space for any trace of them. If he discovers their location before we're ready, he might inadvertently cause the very displacement we're trying to prevent. Zefak's entire worldview shifted as he processed this information. He was not uncovering a kidnapping plot or an act of war. He was potentially threatening his own children's safety by attempting to rescue them. The humans were not his enemies, but their protectors, working to solve a problem that his own government apparently understood better than he did. Inside the house, Sarah had begun her morning routine with his hatchlings in tow. She moved to a small food preparation area within her room, where she began offering them items from containers marked with Catherian nutritional symbols. Somehow the humans had obtained proper food for his offspring, further evidence of their genuine intent to provide care. The sight of little Kira accepting nutrition pellets from Sarah's hands while purring contentedly made Zefak's chest ache with conflicted emotions. His youngest had always been shy around strangers, yet she treated this human child as if they were related. The bond between them appeared to transcend species boundaries in ways that conventional science couldn't explain. A soft, chiming sound from his armor alerted Zefak to an incoming transmission from his ship. Temak's voice reached him through the encrypted communication link, carefully modulated to avoid detection by human sensors. "Commander, we've received new orders from Fleet Command," his navigation officer reported. "High Command is aware of your mission parameters and requests immediate contact for updated briefing." They emphasized that the situation is more complex than originally believed. Zefak made a decision that went against every military protocol he had ever learned. "Tamak, maintain position and await my return. I need more time to assess the situation here. The intelligence we received was incomplete. Sir, Fleet Command specifically requested, I'm ordering communication silence until I can fully evaluate the threat level." Zefak interrupted. "My assessment is that precipitous action could endanger the mission objectives." He terminated the connection before Tamak could protest further. For the first time in his military career, Zefak was choosing parental instincts over orders from his superiors. If his government knew more about the temporal anomaly than they had told him, he needed to understand the complete situation before making any decisions that might affect his offspring's safety. Below him, Sarah was now engaged in what appeared to be educational activities with his hatchlings. She showed them images on a small display device, pointing to various objects and making sounds that his offspring attempted to repeat. They were learning human language while she somehow absorbed their communication patterns in return. The scene was so domestic, so natural, that Zefak found himself struggling to believe it was real. His children, who should have been frightened and traumatized by separation from their family, appeared to be thriving in ways he had never seen before. Their color patterns showed deeper contentment than they had displayed even in their home environment aboard his ship. A new and disturbing thought began to form in Zefak's mind. What if his hatchlings were not just safe with the human child, but actually happier than they had been with him? What if their bond with Sarah represented something more profound than simple temporal anchoring? The possibility that his children might prefer their current situation to returning home was almost too painful to consider. Yet the evidence before his eyes seemed to support exactly that conclusion. As the local day progressed, Zefak witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about interspecies relationships. Sarah's parents, whom he had learned were named David and Maria, invited Dr. Chen to visit the house for what appeared to be a routine examination of both the human child and his hatchlings. Dr. Chen arrived in a vehicle that showed no military markings, suggesting this was a civilian scientific operation rather than a government detention program. The elderly human carried equipment that Zefak's sensors identified as medical scanning devices, though modified with technology he didn't recognize. Through the window, Zefak observed Dr. Chen's interaction with his offspring. The scientist approached them slowly, speaking in soft tones while allowing them to investigate his equipment at their own pace. His behavior showed deep understanding of Catherian psychology, respecting their natural caution while encouraging cooperation through patience rather than force. "The temporal integration is proceeding better than our most optimistic projections," Dr. Chen announced as he reviewed his scanner readings. "All 3 children are developing stable quantum signatures that match our local time stream. Sarah's empathic field is literally teaching their neural patterns how to exist in synchronized time." "What exactly does that mean?" David asked, his concern evident in his voice tone patterns that Zefak's translator easily interpreted. When the Catherian children were caught in the temporal anomaly, they became unstuck from linear time, Dr. Chen explained. They were existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously, unable to anchor themselves to any specific moment. Without intervention, they would have eventually dispersed across infinite timelines, effectively ceasing to exist. Zefak felt his blood chill as he processed this information. His hatchlings had not simply been lost. They had been dying in ways that conventional medicine couldn't detect or treat. The humans had not kidnapped them. They had saved their lives. Sarah's brain produces natural quantum resonance patterns that most humans don't develop until much later in life. If at all, Dr. Chen continued. Her empathic abilities create a stabilizing field that allows displaced beings to gradually synchronize with our timeline. She's essentially teaching them how to exist in the same moment as the rest of us. Maria knelt beside Sarah, who was quietly playing with Kira, while the other hatchlings explored Dr. Chen's equipment. "Is this process harming Sarah in any way? We love having them here, but not if it's dangerous for our daughter." "Quite the opposite," Dr. Chen assured her. Sarah's natural abilities have been growing stronger through this contact. The Catherian children's quantum patterns are actually enhancing her empathic development. It's a symbiotic relationship that benefits both species. Zefak watched as Sarah demonstrated this enhanced ability by somehow sensing that Ninth was becoming anxious about the medical examination. Without any obvious communication, she moved to his eldest offspring and began the specific clicking vocalizations that would calm a nervous Catherian youth. Her pronunciation was perfect, despite the fact that her vocal apparatus should have been incapable of producing those sounds correctly. How long before they can safely return to their family? David asked the question that Zefak desperately wanted answered. Dr. Chen's expression grew more serious. That's where the situation becomes complicated. Forcing separation too quickly could cause them to lose their temporal anchoring and slip back into quantum flux. They need several more weeks of gradual integration before it would be safe to attempt relocation. Several more weeks? Maria's voice carried surprise. What about their parents? They must be frantic with worry. We've been in communication with Catherian authorities through diplomatic channels, Dr. Chen explained. The situation is delicate because the children's father, Commander Zefak, has been conducting unauthorized searches in human space. His government is concerned that his emotional state might lead to actions that could destabilize the temporal integration process. Zefak's scales flushed with shame as he realized the truth. His desperate search for his offspring had not only been unnecessary, but potentially dangerous to their recovery. His own government had been protecting them by keeping him away, knowing that his parental instincts might override the careful scientific process required for their healing. There's something else, Dr. Chen added, his voice taking on a tone that suggested significant news. The bond that's formed between Sarah and the Catherian children appears to be more than just therapeutic. Our quantum analysis suggests they've developed a permanent empathic connection that transcends normal species boundaries. What does that mean for the future? David asked. It means that complete separation might not be possible or even desirable, Dr. Chen admitted. Sarah and the Catherian children have become quantum entangled at a neural level. Separating them completely could cause psychological trauma for all parties involved. Zefak felt the world tilt around him as the implications became clear. His children had not just been saved by this human family. They had become permanently bonded to them in ways that science was only beginning to understand. The choice he faced was not simply about when to retrieve his offspring, but whether forcing their return would cause more harm than leaving them where they were. Inside the room, Sarah was now engaged in what appeared to be a teaching session with his hatchlings. She held up various objects while they provided the Catherian words for each item, their voices blending in harmonious patterns that suggested genuine joy in learning together. The scene was so peaceful, so natural, that it seemed wrong to even consider disrupting it. A new transmission from Dr. Chen's communication device drew Zefak's attention back to the conversation. Dr. Chen, this is Command. We've detected unusual energy signatures in the vicinity of New Brisbane. They match the quantum resonance patterns we've been monitoring. Is everything normal at your location? Dr. Chen's expression grew alert as he checked his own scanning equipment. I'm reading elevated quantum activity as well. It's almost as if someone with Catherian biotechnology is in close proximity to the children. Zefak realized with growing alarm that his own equipment was causing detectable interference with the delicate temporal stabilization process. His presence here wasn't just potentially dangerous to his offspring's emotional well-being, it was threatening the very scientific procedures that were keeping them alive. I need to increase the isolation field around the house, Dr. Chen announced. If there's uncontrolled Catherian technology nearby, it could destabilize everything we've accomplished. Sarah suddenly looked up from her play with the hatchlings, her expression showing concern that seemed to come from nowhere.
Something's wrong, she announced with the certainty that children often displayed about things they couldn't logically know.
Someone's watching us. All three of Zefak's offspring immediately moved closer to Sarah, their scales shifting to protective coloration patterns that indicated they sensed potential danger. Their reaction confirmed what Zefak had begun to suspect. Their enhanced empathic connection allowed them to detect his presence even through his stealth systems. The moment had come for a decision that would change everything. Zefak could continue hiding and potentially endanger the process that was saving his children's lives. Or he could trust these humans who had already demonstrated more understanding of his offspring's needs than he possessed himself. Zefak made the most difficult decision of his military career. Slowly, deliberately, he deactivated his stealth systems and stepped back from the window where he had been observing. His armor's camouflage faded away, revealing his full form to anyone who might be looking in his direction. Inside the house, Sarah's head snapped toward the window with uncanny precision. "He's here," she announced, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "The father is here." Dr. Chen's scanning equipment immediately confirmed her statement with a series of urgent beeping sounds. "Cytherian life signs. Approximately 20 meters from the house," he reported into his communication device. "Single individual, armed but not approaching aggressively." David and Maria immediately moved to protective positions around Sarah and the hatchlings, their parental instincts triggering despite their lack of military training. Dr. Chen activated a portable force field generator that created a shimmering barrier around the children while he assessed the situation. "All 3 young ones are responding to his presence," Dr. Chen observed, watching as Nith, Vex, and Kira began making the high-pitched calling sounds that Cytherian offspring use to communicate with their parents across distances. Their quantum signatures are fluctuating. The temporal anchoring is holding, but it's being strained by emotional resonance. Zefak could hear his children calling for him through the house's walls, their voices carrying the complex harmonics that conveyed both joy at sensing his presence and confusion about why he wasn't responding immediately. The sound tore at his heart, making it almost impossible to maintain his cautious approach. Drawing on decades of diplomatic experience from his military service, Zefak activated his armor's communication systems and broadcast on standard interspecies frequencies. "This is Commander Zefak of the Cytherian fleet. I request peaceful contact with the humans caring for my offspring. I am aware that my presence may be disrupting their medical treatment." The response came quickly through the house's external speakers. "Commander, this is Dr. Chen. We've been expecting you, though perhaps not quite this soon. Your children are safe and recovering well. Are you willing to approach under diplomatic protocols?" "I am willing to follow any protocols that ensure my offspring's continued safety," Zefak replied, though every instinct screamed at him to rush into the house and reclaim his children immediately. "I have observed enough to understand that you have been protecting them rather than holding them captive." Dr. Chen's voice carried obvious relief. "Your observation skills are commendable, Commander. We've been working with your government through official channels, but direct communication with you has been challenging to arrange. Would you be willing to meet face-to-face so we can explain the complete situation?" Zefak began walking slowly toward the house's main entrance, his weapon systems powered down to show peaceful intent. As he approached, he could see movement through the transparent barriers as the human family prepared to receive their first direct contact with an armed alien, being the front door open to reveal David and Maria flanking Dr. Chen, their body language showing nervousness but also determination to protect their charges. Behind them, Sarah stood with all 3 hatchlings clustered around her legs, their scales showing the excited coloration patterns that indicated they recognized their parents' approach. "Commander Zefak," Dr. Chen greeted him formally. "Please come inside. Your children have been waiting for this moment, though we need to manage the reunion carefully to avoid destabilizing their temporal integration." Zefak removed his helmet as he entered the house, allowing the humans to see his face clearly for the first time. His scales showed the stress patterns that had dominated his coloration for weeks, deep purples and grays that indicated prolonged anxiety and exhaustion. "Papa," Kira's voice rang out in perfect Cytherian, followed immediately by similar calls from Nith and Vex. They started to move toward him but stopped when Sarah gently placed her hands on their shoulders. "We need to go slow," Sarah explained to them in carefully pronounced Cytherian, her voice carrying an authority that seemed far beyond her apparent age. "Your papa is here, but we have to be careful not to break the connections we've built." Zefak stared at the human child in amazement. Not only was she speaking his language fluently, but she was demonstrating understanding of the temporal integration process that rivaled Dr. Chen's scientific knowledge. More remarkably, his hatchlings immediately accepted her guidance, treating her words as if they came from a respected family elder. "How is this possible?" Zefak asked, his voice carrying the subsonic rumbles that indicated deep emotional impact. "She speaks as if she has studied our language for years. Yet your species had no contact with mine until recently. That's part of what makes this situation so extraordinary," Dr. Chen explained, gesturing for everyone to move to a larger room where they could sit comfortably. Sarah's empathic abilities allow her to absorb and mirror neural patterns from other beings. She's literally learned Catherian communication by sharing consciousness with your children. As they settled into the sitting area, Zefak watched in fascination as his hatchlings automatically arranged themselves in a protective formation around Sarah, while still maintaining visual contact with him. Their behavior suggested they considered both him and the human child to be their family unit simultaneously. The quantum entanglement we discussed earlier means that your children now exist in a state of dual belonging, Dr. Chen continued. They remain bonded to you as their biological parent, but they've also formed equally strong connections to Sarah and her family. Attempting to sever either bond could cause psychological trauma that might destabilize their temporal anchoring entirely. Maria leaned forward, her expression showing the kind of maternal concern that transcended species boundaries. "Commander, we want you to know that we never intended for this to happen." When Sarah first told us about the lost children she could sense, we thought she was having nightmares. It wasn't until they actually appeared in her room that we understood something unprecedented was occurring. "Appeared?" Zefak repeated, his tactical mind focusing on the specific word choice. "The temporal displacement created a resonance effect with Sarah's natural abilities," Dr. Chen explained. "Your children were essentially pulled into our timeline by her empathic field, which recognized their distress and acted as an anchor point. She literally saved them from quantum dissolution by providing them with a stable consciousness to synchronize with." Zefak looked at his offspring, seeing them with new understanding. They weren't just safe, they were alive only because of the intervention of this remarkable human child. The debt he owed to Sarah's family was beyond anything that traditional diplomacy could address. "What happens now?" he asked, though he suspected the answer would be more complex than he was prepared to accept. "That depends on several factors," Dr. Chen replied carefully. "Your children need more time to fully stabilize their temporal integration. Additionally, the bond they've formed with Sarah appears to be permanent. Complete separation might not be possible without causing harm to all parties involved." David cleared his throat nervously. "Commander, we need you to understand that we love your children as if they were our own. But we also recognize that you're their biological parent and have rights that supersede our emotional attachment. We're willing to work with whatever arrangement serves their best interests." Zefak studied the human family, seeing genuine love and concern in their expressions as they looked at his hatchlings. These beings had risked everything to save children who weren't even their own species, asking for nothing in return except the opportunity to continue providing care. "I would like to speak with my offspring," Zefak said finally, "to understand their feelings about this situation before making any decisions about their future." Dr. Chen established a careful protocol for the reunion, using his monitoring equipment to track the quantum stability of all parties involved. Sarah sat beside Zefak's hatchlings, her presence serving as an anchor point while they reconnected with their biological parent. After weeks of separation, "Papa, we missed you so much," Nith said, his scales shifting to the warm gold patterns that indicated joy mixed with relief. "But we couldn't come home. We were lost in the between times until Sarah found us." Kira climbed onto Zefak's lap with the fearless affection that had always characterized his youngest offspring. "Sarah taught us new games and showed us human stories," she chirped in the rapid-fire speech of excited youth. "Did you know humans dream in colors we can't even see? Sarah shares her dreams with us sometimes." Vex, always the most analytical of his children, approached the reunion with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Papa, the humans saved our lives. Dr. Chen says we would have stopped existing if Sarah hadn't anchored us to this timeline. We owe them a life debt that can never be repaid." Zefak felt his chest tighten as he processed his children's words. They spoke not as prisoners eager for rescue, but as beings who had found a second family that complemented rather than replaced their original bonds. Their emotional health appeared better than it had been even before their disappearance. "Tell me about your time here," Zefak requested, using the formal phrasing that indicated he was prepared to listen without judgment. For the next hour, his hatchlings regaled him with stories of their experiences in the human household. They spoke of learning Earth customs, participating in human educational activities, and developing friendships with other human children in the neighborhood, who had accepted their presence with the adaptability that seemed characteristic of young beings across all species. Sarah's parents read us stories every night, Kira explained, her voice carrying the contentment of a child who felt secure in her environment. Maria makes food that tastes almost like home nest cooking, and David taught us how to tend the garden plants. The other human children want to learn our language, Nath added. We've been teaching them, and they've been showing us their games. Yesterday we played something called tag that's similar to hunt training, but more fun because nobody gets hurt. Vex demonstrated his new knowledge by perfectly reciting a human poem about friendship, his pronunciation flawless despite the challenge of human vowel sounds for Catherian vocal apparatus. Sarah taught me this. She says it means that family isn't just about sharing genetic material, but about caring for each other. Throughout their recounting, Sarah remained quietly present, occasionally translating concepts that didn't exist in Catherian culture, or helping the hatchlings find words to express complex emotions. Her intuitive understanding of both species' psychological needs was remarkable for someone so young. Papa, Kira said finally, her voice taking on the serious tone that indicated important communication. We love you and we want to be with you, but we also love Sarah and her family. They're not replacement parents, they're additional parents. Is that allowed in Catherian law? The question struck at the heart of Zephak's dilemma. Traditional Catherian society was built around nuclear family units with clearly defined parental roles. The concept of extended family bonds across species lines existed nowhere in their legal or cultural frameworks. Yet, as he observed his children, Zephak could see that their bond with the human family was genuine and beneficial. They displayed none of the psychological stress that would be expected from forced adoption or cultural displacement. Instead, they seem to have expanded their capacity for love and belonging in ways that enriched, rather than diminished, their original family connections. Sarah, Zephak addressed the human child directly. May I ask you a question? Sarah nodded solemnly, her expression showing the kind of serious attention that children reserved for important adult conversations. Yes, Commander. How do you feel about my children? Do you consider them to be part of your family now? Sarah's answer came without hesitation. They are part of my family. Not because we look the same or because we're the same species, but because we love each other and take care of each other. That's what family means, isn't it? Her simple statement carried profound implications that challenged everything Zephak thought he understood about interspecies relationships. This human child had achieved a level of cross-cultural bonding that diplomats spent decades trying to establish between their governments. Dr. Chen cleared his throat quietly. Commander, there's something else you should know. Sarah's empathic abilities have been enhanced by her contact with your children, but your children have also gained new capabilities from their bond with her. They're developing psychic talents that don't normally manifest in Catherians until much later in life, if at all. To demonstrate, Neith closed his eyes and extended his consciousness toward his father. Zephak felt a gentle touch against his mind, a warm presence that conveyed love and reassurance without words. The sensation was similar to the telepathic contact that adult Catherians could achieve, but with a clarity and strength that shouldn't have been possible for someone his son's age. Sarah taught us how to share feelings directly, Nith explained. It makes communication much clearer when words aren't enough. Zephak realized that his children had not just survived their temporal displacement, they had evolved beyond their original capabilities through their symbiotic relationship with the human family. Forcing them to abandon this connection might not just cause emotional trauma, it could actually limit their development as individuals. What would you propose as a solution? Zephak asked Dr. Chen, though his question was addressed to the entire group. Maria leaned forward, her maternal instincts clearly engaged. Commander, we understand that your children belong with you, but we've also grown to love them as our own. Would it be possible to arrange some kind of shared custody arrangement? Perhaps they could spend time in both environments? David nodded in agreement. We're not trying to replace you as their parent. We'd like to be their extended family, if that's acceptable within your cultural framework. Dr. Chen added his scientific perspective. From a medical standpoint, maintaining the bond with Sarah appears to be beneficial for all parties involved. The quantum entanglement they've developed could actually be strengthened by regular contact, rather than threatened by separation. Zefek looked at his children, seeing hope and anticipation in their expressions as they waited for his decision. They wanted to maintain their connections to both families, to exist in a state of expanded belonging that transcended traditional boundaries. "I need time to consider this proposal," Zefek said finally, "and I need to communicate with my government about the legal and diplomatic implications. This situation is unprecedented in our recorded history." Sarah reached out and gently touched his armored gauntlet. "Commander, your children are happy here, but they miss you too. Maybe happiness doesn't have to be a choice between families. Maybe it can be about having more people to love you." Her words carried a wisdom that seemed impossible for someone her age, yet Zefek could sense the truth in them. His children hadn't been stolen from him. They had been given the opportunity to expand their capacity for love and belonging in ways that enriched their lives immeasurably. 3 months later, Zefek stood in the garden behind what had once been exclusively the human family's home, watching his children play with Sarah and her friends. The scene would have been impossible to imagine before the temporal displacement incident, yet now it felt as natural as breathing. The diplomatic negotiations had taken weeks, involving high-level discussions between human and Kitherian governments about establishing precedents for interspecies family arrangements. The solution they had reached was complex but workable. Zefek had been granted extended leave from his military duties to remain on Haven Prime, while the human family had been given official recognition as auxiliary guardians for his offspring. Dr. Chen's research had proven invaluable in supporting their case. The quantum entanglement between Sarah and the Kitherian children had stabilized into something unprecedented in scientific literature, a permanent psychic bond that enhanced the abilities of all parties involved. Separating them would have constituted both cruelty and a waste of extraordinary potential. "Papa, watch this," Kira called out from across the garden, where she was demonstrating her ability to make flowers bloom through direct telepathic contact with their root systems. The skill was something that adult Kitherians could achieve only after decades of training, yet his daughter had developed it naturally through her connection with Sarah's empathic abilities. Nith and Vex were engaged in a complex game with several human children from the neighborhood, using a combination of telepathic communication and traditional spoken language to coordinate their activities. The human children had adapted to psychic contact with remarkable ease, suggesting that their species possessed latent abilities that contact with Kitherians could help develop. Sarah moved among all the children with the natural authority of someone who had become a bridge between worlds. Her empathic abilities had grown stronger through her bond with the Kitherian young, allowing her to sense and harmonize the emotional states of everyone around her. Dr. Chen had suggested that she might become the first human to achieve true cross-species telepathic communication. "She's remarkable," Maria said, joining Zefek at his observation post. Over the months, the human female had become something like a sister figure to him, sharing parental duties and concerns in ways that transcended their biological differences. "They all are," Zefek replied, his scales showing the deep blues and greens that indicated profound contentment. "I came here expecting to fight a war to recover my stolen children. Instead, I discovered that my family had grown larger than I could have imagined." David approached from the house, carrying a communication device that displayed the official seal of the Kitherian Diplomatic Corps. "Commander, you have a priority message from your government. They're requesting a status report on the experimental family arrangement." Zefek accepted the device and reviewed the message, noting that it came from the highest levels of Kitherian authority. The success of their arrangement on Haven Prime had attracted attention throughout both governments, with other mixed families beginning to request similar accommodations. "They want to establish a formal protocol based on our experience," Zefek announced. "Apparently there are other cases of interspecies bonding occurring throughout the galaxy, and they need guidelines for handling them." Dr. Chen emerged from his portable laboratory, where he had been conducting his daily monitoring of the quantum entanglement effects. "Commander, the readings continue to show remarkable stability. Not only are your children maintaining their temporal integration, but they're actually strengthening their quantum signatures through continued contact with Sarah. What does that mean for their future development?" Zefek asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "It means they're becoming something new. Dr. Chen replied with obvious excitement. Not fully Catherian, not human, but a hybrid consciousness that combines the best traits of both species. They retain their cultural identity and biological characteristics while gaining enhanced psychic abilities and emotional flexibility. Sarah ran up to them, her face bright with the kind of joy that only children could express so completely. Commander Zefak, Kira wants to know if we can have a sleepover tonight. All the children want to practice the group telepathy exercises. You taught us. Zefak looked down at the human child, who had saved his offspring's lives and transformed his understanding of what family could mean. Of course, Sarah, but only if your parents approve. We approve, Maria and David said simultaneously, their voices carrying the kind of unified response that developed between beings who had learned to share parental responsibilities across species lines. As the day progressed into evening, Zefak helped prepare for what had become a regular event in their household. Human and Catherian children would gather for shared meals, storytelling, and telepathic bonding exercises that strengthened their connections while teaching them to understand each other's cultures. During dinner, prepared with foods from both worlds, the conversation flowed seamlessly between multiple languages as the children demonstrated their growing linguistic abilities. Zefak marveled at how natural it had become to see human and Catherian young sharing the same table, the same experiences, the same emotional bonds. Commander, Sarah said during a quiet moment between the evening's activities, do you think other families like ours will happen? Zefak considered the question carefully. I believe they will, Sarah. What we've created here, this expansion of what family can mean, is too valuable to remain unique. Other beings throughout the galaxy will discover that love doesn't recognize species boundaries. Later, as he tucked his children into their sleeping arrangements alongside Sarah, Zefak reflected on how completely his life had been transformed. He had begun this journey as a desperate father seeking to reclaim his stolen offspring. He was ending it as part of an extended family that challenged every assumption about interspecies relationships. Papa, Kira whispered sleepily. Are you happy that we got lost in time? The question might have seemed strange coming from anyone else, but Zefak understood exactly what his youngest was asking. I'm happy that being lost led us to find something even more wonderful than what we had before, he replied, as he prepared to settle into his own sleeping area within the house that had become his second home. Zefak received a final communication from his ship. Tamak reported that Catherian Command had officially approved the establishment of Haven Prime as an experimental colony for interspecies family development. More families would come, bringing their own challenges and opportunities for growth. The bond between his children and Sarah's family would become the template for a new kind of relationship between their species, one based not on political treaties or economic agreements, but on the simple recognition that love could transcend any boundary. Standing at the window of Sarah's room, watching his children sleep peacefully beside their human sister, Zefak understood that they had participated in something historic. They had proven that family was not defined by genetics or species, but by the willingness to care for each other across any distance, through any challenge, beyond any difference. In saving his children, the humans had saved him as well, from the narrow definitions of belonging that had limited his understanding of what was possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to expand their remarkable family even further. But tonight, all his children were safe, happy, and loved beyond measure. For any parent in the galaxy, that was enough.